How are you today? We're going to do intensive research workshop and persuasive writing for today's lecture. We're gonna break them down into the different parts, as well as how do you basically start and how do you basically make an efficient direction in terms of doing research. Because there's a lot of misconception with research that it's supposed to be very difficult and it requires a lot of skills and competencies when you're about to do that. So we're gonna break them down and we're gonna make sure that you understand these things. So basically, this is my style in teaching research, as well as how do you make directions in terms of guiding you into what could be an easier way to understand research, most especially to students and some people who would like to do research for the first time. So for this session, you will be learning to identify the research problem, create a research question, construct the working title, design and develop instrument, and understand the overflow of the research. Okay, identifying the research problem. This is where we get first. I think many people get some conflicts or confusion with regards to identifying research problem. It's because when you are being asked to do research, the automatic perception is that what topic are we going to do research? What sort of themes are we going to do research? And so there is already a very, very wrong question of starting your research. The first question should be, what is the problem that I want to do research on? Okay, I think that's really the best way to start in doing research. So let's move on. Let's have a saying from Albert Einstein. He says, if I had 1 hour to solve a problem and my life depends on it, I would use the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. Okay? So basically, you cannot do research without this question or problem. So I think that's what he wants to imply. That when you do research, there are many things, when you look around, there are many, many problems. And at the same time, if you conduct research without a direction, you will get lost along the way. So you have to ask the right question. And among these many problems, you're going to you're going to identify the right question to ask for your research and to solve a problem in order for you to be in the right direction. Okay. So this is the diagram of a research process. Okay, these are very self-explanatory. This is very important in terms of your direction, but this is not yet the breakdown of the research. This is just to tell you that these steps are important in terms of trying to figure out the time frame, for example, and the general outlines that you will have to do in terms of preparation in doing your research. Okay, what are some sources of problems that you can basically get, uh, uh, like, where do you get them? So one is problems encountered in practice. So you also have needs analysis. So when you talk about needs analysis, it talks about research that maybe it needs some tools when you do a process. For example, uh, this is just an example. If you want to do mining to a certain area, what are the needs that you need to do, for example? And also, if you have community immersions, you wanted to do research in communities, you need to assess what are the needs, for example, of the communities there. If you want to do projects, for example, what are their needs? And you have to do this through the needs analysis. It can be knowledge gap. When you talk about knowledge gap, the things that they don't know, which they want. For example, in a community in Baliwasan, we had a needs analysis with regards to a predetermined theme on economy, informal economy. So we had it there and had the needs analysis. We found out that they need training for some sort of informal livelihood. Another thing is conflicting findings. When you talk about conflicting findings, This talks about primarily maybe information that you think needs to be verified or validated. Okay, so maybe there are two in conflicting findings right now, so you cannot decide which one is to be followed or which one is the truth. No, for example, you have two different outcomes using two different procedures. So you wanted to validate which one is a better procedure. So that's one. The next one is research agenda. Research agenda is general. So research agenda themes can be found. There are national agenda, there are regional agenda, there are also institutional agenda. So this agenda could be sources of research or problems wherein you can ask, no, specifically on certain themes. Like right now in fact even in the international and national fields or areas, the pandemic is a very consistent not member but part of the list in terms of doing research because it's very timely and very relevant. So there are many problems with this kind of themes, no? So the moment you see some of these themes, you can see that there are problems that automatically are associated with these themes. Okay, problems encountered in practice would include services. Like, for example, if our registrar is doing their services or if they want to improve their services, they can do research about the services that they're currently doing right now. Or maybe if they want a technological application or an ICT application of their current service, then they can do research. No, so these are problems that may be taken from in the context of services. This can also be with other services, with maybe other governments, maybe with the educational sector, the corporate sector, maybe in business, when you do transactions. So these are services oriented themes. No, so there are problems with there that you can find for you to do research. The other one is functions. So maybe functions like for example, it's just an example that like the PNP, how they function in terms of regulating sidewalk vendors. Are they doing the functions or even function in the schools, for example? Are they functioning as ideally the functions were originally made to? For example, master teachers, are they doing their function? Or you think that there are functions that are already redundant? Or there are functions that you need to add? The same case with the head teachers and the likes. And many other functions that you can think of, or maybe positions in certain organizations. Insufficient skill sets rather. So when you talk about insufficient skill set, these maybe are things that you see that are not enough. Like for example, in our school, there may be some skill sets in research that we think are lacking and we wanted to improve. So you do research and basically find out what's the best thing to do in order to improve it, the how and the what. Then there's training gaps. For example, one research that I encountered is basically on the graduates of BS entrep students or entrepreneur students. When they go in the field, are they trained to do marketing? When they basically go on board into the respective companies or corporations, when you talk about competencies in marketing, are there training gaps that needs to be filled in order for them to be better and to be a standard marketing person? So that's what. Another thing is process or procedural. So this one is quite general, and I think this is very much consistently available in any organizations and any institutions, for example, no, processes and procedures. So for example, I think classic example is when you process your financial support, no, scholarship allowances. Basically, are the processes already enough, or we need to improve it in terms of the completion of the number of days, etc. Inefficiency. So, inefficiency, of course, we know efficiency, it's like the production of quality goods at a certain period of time, no? So, we can measure efficiency, and there are some practices or some procedures, by the way, which may affect inefficiency. So, it's a big word, but it can be broken into some sort of maybe factors, maybe some components and the likes. And there are problems that are associated with it. Then another one is quality or standard flaws, no? So I think this is self-explanatory. If you want outputs of quality, or if you want to to give a guide on how to make standard procedures, processes, or even outcome, then you can consider not finding problems, but at least associate some problems on how to achieve it. That's why you need to research in order to reach that point, or find the answer to some questions on how to make things of quality and of standard. Okay, needs analysis. What's under needs analysis? Under needs analysis are the following. One is knowledge gap. So when you talk about knowledge gap, you don't know the answer. No? Sometimes it talks about the things that you are not doing yet right now. So you need to find it. I think one of the knowledge gap that have been researched during this time is basically uh, like the different mental disruption that happens, no, mental health disruption that happens during this time. Another thing is, how do you practice assessments if you are a teacher? So to your students, there are different types of assessment. These can be our practical assessments. These can be written assessments, or oral assessments. So how do you do that? Sometimes even if we know it in the past, but since the scale or effect of the pandemic has changed the practice within the academic sphere, then we do not know what are the things that we have to do in terms of this situation, no? Just like what I've mentioned, maybe assessment or teaching and the like, no? So you can do that research. Another thing is conflicting findings. When you talk about conflicting findings, I think one of my lessons in the masters is uh, there was a presentation with regards to the women in the past in terms of education, in terms of promotions and giving them opportunities. So I think uh, there may be some facts that can be verified or can be proven to be true or not true. Like for example, are the women in the past being given uh, the same opportunities and promotional availabilities for them? Like, is it happening now, or has it improved if they were not present during in the past, like a few centuries ago, for educators or for women in general? So that's it. So you want to find out uh, results of certain studies, and add results of certain studies, and prove them that it's either wrong, or there are things that are already added to that given fact in history or previous findings. So in general, it's about any conflicting findings. Okay, the next one is the missing intervention. Like, I think one of the things that we basically missed in terms of intervention, no? We do monitor a lot of things with our students, like right now, in terms of the academic requirements, challenges, and the likes. But are we doing some intervention? So we know the facts with regards to their statuses, with regards to their mental state, with regards to their struggles in doing the requirements in the academe. But are we doing some intervention? Right? So there may be some findings of what to do, like any form of programs or initiatives as intervention, but we're not yet doing it. No? So when we want to find out so many things with this current crisis, maybe we can uh, maybe we can talk about what are possible interventions that we can give or we can implement. Okay. The next one is the absence of guidelines. I think this is particularly very relevant in terms of uh, doing a new process, for example, just like coming up with policies and guidelines. Because there was a time, right? Last year, there was a sudden order to do lockdown, community quarantines. So, what are the guidelines that we should implement? No. So these guidelines are basically coming from researches because it's a problem. There's an absence of guidelines. So you need to gather data and process them in order to form or construct guidelines. Okay. Another thing is an additional resource. No, for example, you might have a library that has many purposes or mandate. You may also have an office that has many mandate and many expectations are building up because that's expected of them to deliver, no. So you want to study whether why are these expectations and some mandates are not fulfilled, no. Maybe the people are very good already, but along the way there might be some resources that are missing or not present. Maybe it can be human resource, it can be operational cost, or the financial aspect, or maybe other factors, no, that affects the processes, other resources that affects the process or certain practice. And the last one is constructing building structures. I think this is very uh, common, no, on in the fields of engineering, in the fields of sciences, in the fields of ICT, no, information communication technology. So you wanted to research if there are things that are missing, there are things that you need to do structurally, and other things, no. So basically, needs analysis are types of research that wants to find out what do you need to do, no? What are the needs from these problems that you have identified. In business, for example, uh, like we have lots of students who have entrepreneurs, that have enterprises, or they have their own businesses, or online, for example, online businesses. Maybe based on their needs analysis, they have problems with marketing their products. You know, so another thing, if you're an engineering, the needs analysis is that you are in a location, for example, it's very crowded. You have limited space to work on structurally an overpass. So what do you need to do? So you need to find it out. Okay, so these are just list of research agenda that you can have in different institutions, international, national, or regional, because offices like DUST, offices like NEDA, offices like CHED, these are offices that really form and identify agenda for a certain period for to conduct research on, because of course these offices value that the best way to decide on things, especially very vital decision and critical decision, research has to be done. Okay, so generally, our institutions and even some higher level of agenda creation, it's very common that they are looking for innovation and invention. That's in science and technology. Of course, discovering breakthroughs, no, for those who have brilliant ideas and new ideas. In the education, they wanted to specifically focus on producing materials for learning and teaching, as well as maybe trying to calibrate time and time again, by and by, for a certain period of time, our educational curriculums. Are they still part of the industry? Or the other question is, Is it something that the people on the ground wanted to have as a curriculum, or does it address both, no? Or does it even predict the needs of the future, or what can the future benefit from the current curriculum? So it has to be, it's kind of difficult because curriculums need to address the current times as well as not to become insignificant or irrelevant in the future. Okay? So in some other fields like business, especially in the corporate world, I think it's very common for them to have procedural themes, no? Like management and organization. How do you do personnel and how do you improve processes? I think because the tall order for our business administration and management areas is basically on efficiency, no? And of course, how to do things based on time, like applying technology or ICT with your corporate or business or management practices. So those were the sources. Okay.